guys, welcome to trial day 8. As you can see on your screen, I was actually on TV last night, I think while I was working. I actually didn't even know that I was on TV ultimately until much late in the day. So I guess a milestone for this channel. First time I've been on American television, and so yeah, you guys can check that out. I put a link to that on Twitter. What we're going to do today is go through the some of the events of the day. There were quite a few different people, officers on in court, and then also David Warwick. He was definitely a curious figure. He was definitely a curious figure, and we'll talk a little bit about him as we kind of go through this. I just want to greet you guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. I also just want to extend my, I just want to say to Catherine, what's her name? Sorry, Katrina Kruger. That's the patron that we were supposed to do a live either today or tomorrow. She actually came to court, struggled with a very bad migraine, and then had to leave. So our thoughts are with you. We hope that you're doing okay. We also know that Deborah's husband, I think, went to hospital. So anyway, our thoughts are definitely with you guys. Hope you guys are okay. Let us know if you are. Let us know what's kind of happening. So I don't want to spend too much time on a live. I hope this is not going to be a 3-hour live. I've also got to get to bed so that I can be up fairly early tomorrow. Here are some of my tickets from trial so far. I actually got a ticket for tomorrow for the courtroom, and as some of you may know, that there is no court day tomorrow. So I've pulled up, I've pushed up my car hire to tomorrow morning. And any thoughts on where you think I might be headed? Am I going to the Grand Tetons again? Am I heading somewhere else? So anyway, I'll leave that for you guys to think about. I'm gonna sort of jump into this pretty quickly, and then I'll sort of just share some of the things that I saw that I didn't really have time to tweet. There's so much information coming out constantly. It's actually quite difficult to do justice to it all. Crime Geek says, "Are you going somewhere regarding the Gabby Petito case?" Reba says, "Are you going to Moscow? Are you going to California?" I definitely want to go back to California. I am going back to California, but the question is when. Okay, good to see you all here. Okay, so let me Casey Boston says, "Will you be going to the Letitia Stalk trial in Colorado?" No, I will not be. I'm basically covering this trial, and I'm hoping to cover the case in Austin, Texas, but I guess we'll see how things go. I would have liked to have covered the Letitia Stalk case because I wrote a book about it. It's just a little bit out of the way, if I can put it that way. But who knows? I might be surprised that I do end up going. Who knows? At this point, it's not part of the plan. Okay. I do think I will be in Colorado at some point, but not right now. Right now, I'm kind of more headed in the northerly part of the country than the south, but in terms of the northwest and southwest. Okay. Thanks for your work. I've got to go to bed. I'd like to go to bed as well. Okay. Right. So someone says the courtroom is empty. It's not. Courtroom isn't empty. Are you saying the teacher cases, the courtroom is empty? Okay, so let's get cracking. So yeah, so I arrived at court this time with plenty of time to spare, and I got I think kind of the prime position. So in other words, if I could have if I could have like waved a wand and chosen a better place to sit, I think Nate Eaton's sitting in quite a good spot, which is in the far left of the court. Slightly, it's like one row in front of where I'm sitting, a little bit to the left of me. From that position, he can see almost, how can I put it? It's a rear view of Laurie and the lawyers, but in terms of looking from a perspective where the witness is like directly opposite them. So that's not a bad spot to be in. But the problem with that is you can't really see her face. Where I was sitting today, I was literally about 6 meters. So that if you imagine a person is about 2 meters long, 6 foot, and you put three people sort of end to end to end, that's about how far I was sitting away from the defense desk. To be honest, although it was a really good view and very unfettered, because it was at a spot where there was a division in the benches, so there's no one sitting in front of you, no big hair, or I won't say hats because you're not allowed to wear hats, but some people have got quite big hair, and you've sort of got to look out the window. So there's no one in my way, just like a completely open, like directly in front of me, line of sight. So although that's ideal, the part that's not so ideal is the court orderlies and deputies are watching you like a hawk. Like you scratch your nose and they almost like ready to pounce on you. You make any move that seems a bit odd, and so there's definitely hypervigilance going on. Laurie's lawyers also, like right at the end of the court day today, Archibald gave quite a long look at our area of the gallery. And obviously, if Laurie is talking to her lawyer, I'm talking about John Thomas on her right, if she's talking to him and she's leaning forward, not only can I see her face, but if she looks just beyond his face, she looks straight at me, which is kind of unnerving as well. So that's sort of the situation. But seeing her this clearly, I mean, compared to yesterday, where I was right on the other side of the court, where you don't see those little things very clearly. You see some pretty interesting kind of behavior patterns, which I'll take you through. Some fairly interesting techniques to deal with the fact that you're in court and everyone's looking at you. And what do you think? Do you think the gallery are friendly towards Laurie? And how do you think she feels about the gallery? Do you think she's got friends and supporters in the gallery? And so there's that kind of tension actually in the air. And then there's also just the folks running the show, running the trial, that are trying to keep the show on the road, and they don't want any incidents. And there have actually been a couple of incidents, right? Alina says, is it emotional for you covering the case? I was actually speaking to someone who said every day they go home and they sleep for 12 hours. It is draining. It's draining because you're giving up so much of your attention. It's like, especially when you're tweeting and you've got to hear every word, you can't sort of get up and take a break in the way that you might want to. So whatever your attention span is, it sort of stretches it out. And so I really sympathize with the jury. Because to some extent we can tune out of it, whereas in a way they can't. So yeah, I would say it's quite exhausting and draining. If it's emotional, I think it's a lot more emotional for the family members, but it certainly is quite draining. And the other thing is, in terms of when you sit in a courtroom, I think every true crime YouTuber should do this. Go and sit in a courtroom and get a sense of the gravitas and the seriousness and the decorum and the process and the procedure in a trial. There's a proper way of dealing with things, and you make a unsubstantiated statement, objection, Your Honor, right? If you had that sort of thing going on YouTube, people, I don't know whether people would be able to say anything. So Chelsea says, I was on a jury once. It's very draining. Okay, so shall we get started? I'll sort of deal with your questions again pretty soon. Okay, so welcome to trial day 8. I'm on the left side. The other thing that I noticed with Laurie was she seemed to be wearing makeup. She actually she looked terrible when I saw the first time, and the second time she really looked scraggly is, I think, the best way to describe it. And today she looked not great, but definitely better, and she definitely looked like she was wearing a little bit more makeup. Not bright red lipstick, but certainly made up. She certainly looked better than I've seen her. And then you kind of had a moment where I think I'm going to bring these up a bit, make them a bit bigger. You had a couple of moments where there would be a sidebar. I was a bit mistaken here. I actually thought it was just the defense attorneys and that had left. Actually, the prosecution team had left as well. But anyway, very early on trial day 8, Laurie was left completely alone. So normally she's shielded especially on one side by the larger John Thomas, and then there's a monitor on John Thomas's side as well, which is turned with its back to the gallery, right? So she's got John Thomas and this monitor that sort of shields her. And not that she really needs any shielding on the other side. She's got Archibald on the other side. And she tends to make a lot of comments away from the gallery towards Archibald. So you don't tend to see her face easily. And so at this moment, both these men are away from the table, and Laurie is all alone. And so what does she do? She's supposed to look at the jury. She's supposed to daydream. Sorry, not the jury, the gallery. At this point, the jury is not even in the room. The judge isn't in the room. So this is one of those strange moments of sort of dead air, where there's a unvoiced interaction taking place between Laurie and the public in a way. Nobody says anything. No one's allowed to say anything, but she's sitting there and she can choose to look at us, or she can choose to do something else. And so what does she do? She scribbles notes. But bear in mind, nothing is happening. There's no courtroom. Nothing is going on in the court. And she's scribbling notes, a whole page full of notes, then another page. And that is what I thought was quite interesting. And that's where you kind of get a sense of Laurie, the actress, Laurie, the pageant queen. And so I thought that was quite interesting. Writing down a whole page of notes when nothing's actually happening in court. Then she went on to a second page. So this tender moment I'm referring to actually happened the day before, when a female officer left the stand. While she did that, she passed Larry Woodcock at the door and kind of placed her hand on his shoulder. Very few people saw that. And funnily enough, I saw the same thing repeated 2 or 3 times. Probably about twice today, where you saw an officer leave the stand as he walked, with Larry sitting kind of right in front of the door, passing him, putting a hand on his shoulder, and sort of leaving. I actually greeted Larry today, just said good morning, and so there's quite a warm and fuzzy thing going on between them and pretty much most of us in the gallery. They are friendly, they are kind, and a lot of us are sympathetic, and with good reason. So there you see Laurie just making notes constantly. And then this was quite a weird moment. Laurie passed a note. It was like a half-page note that she tore off her pad. She tore the note off, and then because there's no one around her, she sort of turned basically with her back to where let me bring myself back a little. By the way, Terry Dean, good to have you here. House of Solomon, SM Kowalinsky, Claudia. So yeah, so this is quite an interesting moment. So she's mostly got her back to us. Now she turned in her chair so that her back would be to where the jury seating was, even though the jury's not there. And she wants to hand this note to, I'm not sure exactly if it's a court martial, but it's not a deputy. The deputies have got sort of uniforms on. These are other people, and they sort of wear suits and they sort of stand behind her almost like bodyguards. And so she hands it to one of them. Previously, I'd seen one of them escort her to a chair, pull the chair out, and she sort of smiled at him. But anyway, and then this gentleman gave this note to a man in the gallery, right in the front. He's sitting right in the front. He's the closest person to the defense desk, and he sort of got short hair. Is wears like kind of a blue suit, and he's apparently Laurie's investigator, or the investigator for her team. And then there was this weird moment where he took the note. Laurie looked at him and kind of gave him a very like obvious thumbs up, and then seemed to glance at us. And the impression I got, and you might say, I don't think that's true, and maybe it's not, but the impression I got was that was kind of directed at us. That she passed a note to him, as almost as if to say, watch out for or pay attention to this person and that person and that person. It just seemed very, what's the word? It seemed very, not staged, but the way that she passed a note, gave him a thumbs up, which is a pretty like obvious gesture that you're going to notice, and then looked at us. It seemed like there was some connection between everything. That's why I say there's kind of a tension when you sit where we're sitting, because you get a sense that her lawyers aren't comfortable with it, and the court orderlies are not, whether they're uncomfortable with it, but they definitely have been told to watch us like a hawk. So yeah, that was something that happened around the beginning. So anyway, so I was watching Laurie like a hawk. So Laurie, let's just bring it back up. What do you guys think of all of that? Yeah, it is theatrical. Okay, so now Laurie's sitting with her back to the gallery. She's writing, but off the desk on her lap. I was sitting next to someone called Holly with sort of long blonde hair. And then at this point, the lawyers filed back in. All rise, judge in the house. And then that's why I said so tense. A lady near us summoned out the courtroom almost like a naughty school child. I don't know what she did. I don't know what she didn't do. And then she came back later, a few minutes later. Judge addresses the court. So there's this long delay. And then the next witness was Nathan Moffat. Moffat was a fairly senior cop, short, peppery gray hair. He was asked if he's watched or read anything online regarding the trial. Every single witness is asked this. Everyone says no. One of the only exceptions, I think there've been one or two exceptions. One of the April Raymond yesterday was an exception, who said she had some media exposure, and that created like almost a trial within a trial. Just like, what did you watch? Is this going to be a problem? And then also David Warwick. And the reason why it's a problem is, let me bring myself back a little. Let me ask you the question. Why do you think it's a problem for a court, for a trial, for the prosecution or for the defense, if a witness has either been interviewed, but more particularly has acknowledged that they've consumed content regarding the case online, why do you think it's a problem? So that's the first question. And the other one is, do you think it is a problem, or do you think it's like, yeah, you can watch whatever you like, just testify? Why do you think it is a problem? And like, do you think it should be a problem? Let's see what you guys say. Terry says, find it surprising that not one witness has glared at her on their way out. I thought I saw that from Melanie Gibb. When Melanie walked out, like David Warwick didn't look her way. I noticed that. April didn't look away, but Melanie Gibb definitely did. Like, you've got to walk out the witness box slightly in their direction, and then you turn when you get to the center of the court and you go out the door. Melanie Gibb definitely did look that way. Whether she was looking at Laurie, I don't know, but it certainly looked like she was. And I would imagine one of the most pissed off people has got to be Melanie Gibb. Let's see what you guys are saying. Perhaps witnesses don't have any common sense, credibility. So that's really the answer. Is the problem is that you may tailor your testimony to what you are seeing online. So in other words, what the court wants to know is your first-hand experience. What the court wants to know is, what did you see? What do you know? And all that kind of, and they don't want kind of a bent, skewed, falsely colored version of what you know. In other words, something that is, you've seen someone express a strong opinion, or you've seen some information that pushes you one way or the other. They don't want that. All they want to know are the facts, right? They don't want a bias. They simply want your knowledge and insight without any of that false color or sharpening of the narrative, right? So can you see how it is actually important that people who go and testify in trial don't watch YouTube videos, don't read the news? But the problem is, what if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or child, and the trial is taking a year to go to trial? You know what I mean? Like, realistically, it's quite difficult if something involves someone you love, or the closest person to you. And now, more than most people, you really have a vested interest in this case, but you're not allowed to read about it. Carol Elliott, good to see you. True Jedi forever says, coming across info in today's world is unavoidable, but research is something else. Okay. Elise Fairbanks, good to see you. So anyway, so let's kind of go back to this. So he's a detective sergeant, and he again, Archibald didn't want any discussion about the Charles VALLOW incident. And I must say, it's been very surprising just how much priority repeatedly has been given to the killing of Charles VALLOW. That's really been a big surprise. Thanks a lot, Becky. I don't really agree with that. Like I say, the court wants just what you know, and it's almost unavoidable as a person to not be influenced by what other people think. I can tell you today, when I caught an Uber, I told the Uber driver that Alec Baldwin has just been found, or what's the word? He's not going to be tried, right? Can you see that? And she said, yeah, he should never have been tried anyway. And then I didn't really say what I was going to say. So it really can influence you what other people think, knowing what other people think. So I must have found that quite shocking. So let's continue. So Archie, what's his name? Moffat was assigned the role as case agent. This was the part that was really crazy, is when no one's in court, Laurie's making a lot of notes. But when the court's actually in session, you don't really see her making notes. And that is kind of, to me, double-sidedness to what she's doing. You can imagine she might want to take notes, but she takes by far, from what I could see, she was taking by far the most notes when when it was just her sitting there and us sitting there. And so all of that seems to be an act. I found that really interesting. I really found that that kind of mischievous in a way. Just going to quickly refer to this comment. Wendy, you'll probably not like it. I did cover the Alec Baldwin case, and again, everything I say, you'll probably be thinking, no, I don't agree. I like Alec Baldwin, whatever. The problem in the Alec Baldwin case was that um, there were lots of incidents that happened. There was a lot of safety incidents and a lot of problems. There was a lot of rushing. And there were disgruntled employees because these people weren't used to this low level of safety. So you kind of had a pattern of that sort of thing. And then, so it wasn't just an accident, it seemed to be an accident waiting to happen. So that's not set up, that's something else. And so this is what I find quite frustrating, is that, in true crime, you've got someone who commits a murder, right? But you can't then say, if you kill someone unintentionally, no, that's totally different, so they're innocent. I mean, if you driving drunk and you kill someone, but you didn't intend to kill them, is that, oh, I'm innocent because I didn't intend to do anything, right? And I just find that sort of, there's a little level of subtlety in there, and people just simply don't see it. So I don't know. I guess if you haven't followed the coverage of the Baldwin case, then that's just not something you see. Anyway, I think that's a bit of a, what's the word? I think it's a bit of an injustice, to put it mildly. That's not true, Pauline. He's already gotten a role, and that is to complete the movie Rust. So, anyway, well, let's get back to this. So Moffat describes what Alex said had happened between Tylee, Laurie, and Charles. Laurie is still not taking notes. Now, this is a situation where Laurie is directly at the scene of a murder, and the cop is describing what he says was said there, and she's still not even taking notes. I mean, if there's a time to take notes, isn't it here? And so I thought this is all about the prosecution wanting to highlight inconsistent statements. And so that's kind of the theme of this live, is to say, okay, so Laurie lied. Okay, so what Laurie said was inconsistent. Does that make her a murderer? People are going to, it's up to the jury to say, can you, and it's almost the same as Alec Baldwin. So Laurie didn't actually murder anyone. Laurie didn't pick up, I doubt it anyway. Laurie didn't pick up a gun. Laurie didn't bury anyone, right? So why can't you say, well, then Laurie's innocent? Almost like the same as Alec Baldwin. Laurie didn't there's no like direct proof kind of thing. And so what the prosecution are tasked with is showing all of this indirect proof, all of these, what's the word, inconsistent statements, also statements of intent. And I think a big difference between Alec Baldwin, for example, and Laurie VALLOW is Laurie VALLOW has said, you know, like she said in February, that JJ was going to be gone. Like, I think she said, I'm done with JJ, meaning that JJ was going to go back to Charles. She actually expressed, and we'll get to that, she expressed how unhappy she was with JJ on the day that he disappeared forever, that, you know, that he was climbing over the cabinets. She said that Tylee wanted to be independent, and we know that Tylee and Melanie didn't get along. We know what she said about Charles, that he'd become possessed, and that and we know that Chad said that Tylee had died. Tylee had become a zombie 12 years ago. And all of that expresses a kind of animus against these people who become victims. Whereas Alec Baldwin never said, I don't like the cinematographer, I want to get rid of the cinematographer. No, so there's nothing like that. There's not that level of intent. That is a major difference. Well, but I just don't think he will be. I just don't think he will be. Yeah, that is the difference. Okay, so let's go on. Charles had 2 gunshot wounds, one to the chest, one to the lower abdomen. Alex said that after he shot Charles, he went to wash his hands because he had his own blood on them, and that's very doubtful. I mean, when you actually see Alex, I actually got some photos of him here. When you see him, let's see if I can just bring some of those photos up. Where am I going to find them? I just want to show you some photos of Alex Cox. Just a second. I've done I've got them, but they're not really available just yet. So yeah, I'll have to show you at another point. But it's anyway. Alex Cox basically has a very small amount of blood on the back of his head, and now, oh, did he have to go and wash his hands because there's so much? It's very doubtful. He's saying he went to wash his own blood off his hands, and it was far more likely that he was washing Charles's blood off his hands. Okay. Okay, so I still want to deal with Laurie's interview with law enforcement the next day. So remind me to do that if I don't do that. At this point, Laurie's got her glasses off. She's staring at Blake and Moffat. As I say, she's not taking any notes, right? And so this was one of the biggest moments of the whole trial day 8 for me. Moffat mentions a trajectory of 1 bullet wound. He says that it suggests a downward trajectory. The bullet strike was into the floor below the body, but this is the critical part, that it went through his abdomen and emerged out of his shoulder, right? So what he's actually talking about here is, if I can kind of demonstrate, is the bullet sort of entering, sort of out of screen with me, but I sort of do that, sort of entering here, right? and then coming out there, if that makes sense. In other words, it seems to be someone who is being shot and they're now lying on their back on the ground, and you can almost imagine that they almost trying to crawl away in like a reverse crab position, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like someone has shot you, you fall backwards, but you're trying to escape regardless. You're trying to sort of, get away. You're facing your shooter, but you already in a compromised position, and then you sort of get some distance away when you're shot again, but now you're being shot at from above, if that makes sense, but also diagonally, right? That's exactly what I said happened to Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh has got the same trajectory. It goes upward through his abdomen. Unlike Charles, the bullet doesn't exit his shoulder because it hits his spine, and then it sort of does a little dance inside his body, which is like a wrecking ball. But the point is, why would Vincent van Gogh commit suicide lying on the ground and shooting himself through his abdomen? And that's why I believe Van Gogh was shot by someone while he was on the ground. And what was he doing on the ground? And who was he with on the ground, possibly? Does that make sense? So anyway, the point is, this reminded me of Van Gogh, that this unusual trajectory through the abdomen, and then going upward to the shoulder, right? And that definitely doesn't seem to be a defense. Sorry, it definitely doesn't seem to be like someone is standing in front of you, attacking you, and you're doing it in self-defense. Someone's literally lying on the ground, and they're being shot a second time. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Do you guys follow? He was shot twice. There doesn't seem to be anyone from the Van Gogh letters here that's like, wow, that's quite disappointing. Terry says Charles was set up and ambushed, in my opinion. Yeah, I think so as well. It was premeditated. Okay, so let's continue. So Blake asked whether the Cox statement was consistent with his observations. In other words, Alex Cox was saying, and I didn't even want to go through what he said because it was so nonsensical, but basically that Kylie was trying to protect Laurie, and she was using a baseball bat to sort of prod him away. Charles then, because you've got to turn it into Charles is now belligerent, Charles is attacking. So Charles then takes the bat from Kylie, and Alex Cox is so threatened by this that he takes out his gun and shoots him. And so that's why the bat's got to be part of the whole thing. I personally don't believe there's a bat involved in this at all. And then Moffat said that the drive was very light-hearted. I think this is the drive to the police station. He just said the banter at the back just was completely wrong. It's another cop describing inappropriate effect. It's not scientific, but it's frequently a red flag. The problem for the jury, again, is all of these are red flags, but does it reach the level that it is that someone conspired to commit murder? Yes, they're behaving in a way that's inappropriate. Yes, they're inconsistent statements. Yes, they may be telling lies. Yes, they maybe didn't like someone. But is that enough of a smoking gun to say, without a doubt, this person conspired to commit triple murder? It's not just one murder, it's 1, 2, 3 murders, right? Thanks, SM Kowalinsky. I think so too. So I find it very validating to stumble upon a high-profile true crime case that reinforces what I believe to be true in a 130-year-old case that a lot of people just don't even think about. Nobody thinks about the trajectory of the bullet in the Van Gogh thing. You never hear about it because there's not enough true crime folks in the art world. It's almost like a contradiction, the two things. You've got to take the whole case in its totality. The problem with a case like this is it's fairly complicated. There's a certain cerebral amount of putting pieces of a puzzle together. And that was what I was afraid of with the Alex Murdoch case. Is this jury going to be able to demonstrate common sense? And the answer was yes, and they did. I've got to say, looking at the jury, I made a comment somewhere in these tweets that from what I could see, every single jury member was walking in with a notebook, and I thought that is a very good sign. So I don't know. At the moment, I'm quite happy with what the prosecution's doing. I don't think they can really do much of a better job, other than the financial narrative. I thought they presented poorly. I thought that could have been presented in a more effective way and a clearer way. Okay. So fairly good point. Okay, let's continue. So Laurie's a bit like me in the sense that when I put on reading glasses, sometimes when I tweet, um, and so when she's looking at um, someone in the witness box, she has her glasses off. She somehow looks older without her glasses on. And so I was just watching her. At one point, she clicks her pen, writes a little bit down. Blake was talking about life insurance at this point, and that the insurance had been changed from Laurie to Kay. Now, you can almost imagine that would be something that Laurie would care about. But I must say, good for Charles. Unfortunately, Charles didn't survive this whole incident, but good for him that he made sure that Laurie didn't benefit. And anyway, so then Blake was done. And so, sorry, this isn't Blake, it was Moffat. So that's a bit of a typo. Moffat, as he exited, patted Larry on the shoulder on his way out. And then the next witness was Sydney Schenk. She added a little bit of color to um, the trial day. Quite a young 26-year-old, quite an attractive woman, and she in a way that was not. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. She kind of had like a embarrassed smile on her face while she was giving testimony, and it's like this poor, and I mean it in a sympathetic way, not that she's literally poor, but this poor girl simply advertised that she wanted to be a babysitter, and next thing she's in this high profile case. And she seems to kind of have this weird thing of she's a little bit shy, but it's like, what's all the fuss about? And then, well, there is a reason for there to be a fuss. And so that's why she was there. Laurie contacted her, they exchanged numbers. They discussed JJ and his special needs. She said that I met Laurie on September 18th, 2019. Now, let me ask you guys, what do you think that's all about? And I think there's two possibilities here. Do you think that Laurie was kind of had a sense of conflictedness, that Laurie wasn't sure? Bear in mind, at this point, Tylee's dead and buried, right? And had been for about more than a week, 9 days. Do you think that Laurie was sort of feeling, I wanna make an effort. Maybe there's some way that we can keep JJ around. Maybe I can get a babysitter. Do you think Laurie was had mixed feelings and or even a kind of a change of heart? That she was conflicted? That's the one question. And the other question is, or was Laurie trying to set up like an alibi, almost like to say, "Oh yeah, I hired a babysitter." Is Laurie trying to manufacture an alibi through this? Because bear in mind, within 4 or 5 days, JJ would have died as well. So which one do you think it is? Do you think she's kind of conflicted, mixed feeling, or do you think this is a kind of staging? What do you think it is? Claudia says, I think it's a setup. Where the wind blows says setup or alibi. Gloria is maybe trying to manufacture an alibi. That's quite an interesting point. Does anyone here think that she could have had mixed feelings, thinking, and I think the problem with that, if you do think that she perhaps wanted to keep JJ around, is for how long had she been saying that he was a zombie? I mean, as early as February, she said she was done with JJ. Do you remember that? So, and this is now more than 6 months later. So can you see how, if it is staged, just the whole hiring of the babysitter, if it is staged, then, it's almost like to say, can you see JJ's still alive at this point? Because the babysitter saw that, right? Why would I hire a babysitter if I didn't want JJ around? It's exactly that. Can you see how it's a kind of mind fuckery? It's a kind of, it's kind of mischievous. It's kind of playing games with your mind. Do you notice that? So Laurie gave the babysitter a hug, introduced her to JJ, said that JJ could get emotional easily, and here you have it again. Did she mention Charles? Yes, she said he died of a heart attack. By the way, I met Tammy's aunt outside the court, and I just asked her, is there a history of heart problems in your family? No. Was she? I mean, I'm not that I thought that she did, but it was good to just get it from the family. And then I also asked her if she thought Chad was a successful author, and she said she did think so. And then I asked her, well, have you read one of Chad's books? And she said no. She said, I want a signed copy, but kind of in a joke. Then did she tell you anything about a daughter? Laurie said that Tylee wanted money to babysit. And also that Tylee, I don't know, did she say that Tylee wanted to be independent? I think that maybe was said to someone else. I think that may have been said to David Warwick or something. What do you remember about watching JJ? He played outside. And so you really get a sense that whatever Laurie did or didn't do, Laurie is being triggered. She's reminiscing. She sees someone in front of her, remembers their voice. Remember, Laurie is in jail for most of her day and night. She'll be in jail over the whole weekend. And so this breaks that monotony, but not only that, she's taken back to that timeline. She's remembering all of this stuff. And you see her just sitting there looking and blinking. And again, she's not taking any notes. She's just remembering. She's just experiencing. She's just voyeuristically going through all of that again. And you can imagine there must be a heck of a lot of emotions and feelings going through, because she was in love and she was getting a certain amount of money, and she was probably feeling quite empowered in certain ways. And she was also acting crazy. What does she think about that now? And so you notice she just takes a single little note and then she's done. Laurie said JJ was with his grandparents. So when Sydney kind of inquired again, where is JJ? Well, she said he's with his grandparents. So you get the sense that Laurie is quite good at obfuscation, to put it mildly. Archibald Cross, Sydney says that the original plan was that she would work long term. She ended up working like one day. Sydney still got a slight smile on her face at this point. So that all the witnesses today were pretty short and sweet. So the next witness was a really big dude with a beard. He had a blue shirt, and he was the principal at the Kennedy Elementary in Rexburg. I know when I drove through Rexburg, I did see an elementary school on my left, but I don't remember if it was Kennedy. This was on my way to trying to find Laurie's apartment. Okay, JJ was enrolled September 3rd to 24th, so barely a month. The last day JJ was present was a Friday, September the 20th. This is how clever the prosecution are, just showing JJ's present and then is absent. JJ is seen by this person, then never seen again. Melanie sees him, never sees him again. Melanie's husband sees him, never sees him again. Zulima sees him, never sees him again. What's going on with Laurie when that happens from this person? What's going on with Laurie during this period from that person? What's going on with her finances from that person? And putting all of that on top of each other creates quite a compelling picture, doesn't it? Let's have a quick look at if you voted in the poll, let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Are the prosecution doing enough to win their case? 63% say yes, 15% say no, and then quite a sizable amount, almost a quarter, say yes, but it's complicated for the jury. So even if it's an important point that that the prosecution need to consider is that are they making this case too complicated? And what I find happens quite often, and bear in mind the journalists covering this case and the reporters covering it are it's their job to pay attention. It's their job to make sense out of everything. And sometimes we don't know what is going on. What I mean is a document is put on screen, something is said about it, and then it's taken off screen. Number one, you can't see what is on the document. Number two, there's no arrow pointing at what you need to be seeing, like the date or whatever it is, just a document with lots of things on it. And then it's put on screen and it's taken off. And what I think lawyers need to do more often is to sort of recognize with every kind of presentation they give, with every particular witness, that they would imagine it as telling a short story. And so what is the point of your story? How does this fit in with the overall prosecution story? And then be explicit about that. We're talking about this for this reason or whatever. We're talking about this because it goes to that. I don't think that's really done enough, to be honest. Okay. Wilson said that he told Laurie he could forward all of JJ's paperwork. So no school ever contacted Wilson. That is also quite a strong and important aspect. That you could argue that JJ did go somewhere else, but if he was really being taken care of by anyone else, he should have attended school somewhere. And he didn't in October, he didn't in November, he didn't in December, January, February, March, April, May, right? So this was where you got a rare something from Laurie. She made a quick glance at the gallery and it tossed her head, and then that was it. Done. Okay, so now next was a smallish dude in a light gray suit. So you had this big guy who's the principal of an elementary school, a big guy who's the principal of little people, and a smallish guy who's kind of in charge of bigger people, students at BSU. His name was Win Hill. And now this was dealing with Tylee's absence. Laurie, at this point, just looking down at a notepad, pen hovering, not writing. And so he came in, did his thing, wasn't very long, and all Laurie did at this point was change pens. And so now at this point, Laurie starts writing. The lawyers leave. She flips the page and now looks at Archibald's notes. And there you see, seems to be a lot of pretending to be making notes because she's not writing anything. You know, often she'll have her pen on the pad, but she's not actually writing. So from where the jury are sitting, probably looks like she's writing, but she's actually, the pen is not moving really. But from the distance they are, you probably can't tell that she's not writing. But if she's looking down at her, at the pad with a pen in her hand, it probably looks like she is writing. Okay. So I just got a good look at Lindsay Blake. I just thought she looked a little tired. A lot of people were actually feeling quite tired. And Thursday is not the end of the trial week, but I certainly was feeling quite tired. And so during the recess, Laurie, I noticed, was dressed in a dark suit, probably a black suit. I don't know if I explained this part very well, but she kind of got, unfortunately, so I do have this. So it kind of looks a bit like this. Her suit sleeve stops like over here, right? Maybe even higher up. You see that? And then she's kind of got like a blue shirt under it that's very ruffled. I can't really do it. So I don't have much of a, but it's like very ruffled on the end. And so both her shirt sleeves under her suit sort of ruffle up by her hands. The other thing is Laurie seems really thin. So does Melanie Gibb, and so does April Raymond. Three blonde ladies, all three very, very thin. She's so thin that when you see her hand holding a pen, even her fist looks quite small. And I must say, her fist looks quite red as well. It's quite a small red little hand. And if I remember correctly, during this moment, so I'm trying to observe, and so my attention is like, what is Laurie doing? And I'm trying to finish composing my tweet, and like the other people in the gallery are just filing away. And I don't think I did finish the tweet when a, what do you call it, a orderly or court deputy standing right in front of me, like, so you need to leave. That's the kind of tension you're kind of under. You know, it's like, why are you still, I'm not sure if it was actually at this moment or the next recess, but why are you still sitting here, kind of thing. And so it's sometimes quite hard to just focus on trying to observe when you have that sort of situation, you know. Leanne says, what does her face and hair look like? She looks like she's gotten 10 or 15 years older than when you last saw her. She looked better today than she did yesterday or the first day I was in trial. She seems to have a bit of makeup on, a little bit of lipstick, but not bright red. Her hair basically looks terrible. Her hair is a kind of mousy brown, grey sort of tangle. There's a little bit of curling in it, but her hair doesn't look very good. Yeah, it's I would say it's completely not blonde. It's kind of a grey brown mousy color, and it's sort of tangled. Her hair did look a little bit better today than it did previously. Yeah, but it's hard to look at her and think that someone thought she was a god and someone wanted to give up his whole life for her and someone else perhaps killed for her. It's hard to believe that this woman is the center of all of this incredible drama. And it kind of makes you think, wow, makeup and blonde hair can do a lot, and I guess, charm. Elise says, so I hope that answers your question. Elise says, you can't do all the normal hair care and coloring in jail. Somebody told me that in Rexburg, so when Laurie appeared in court in Rexburg, so obviously she was in jail in Rexburg as well, the authorities were accommodating in terms of that she was allowed to get makeup and use makeup and whatnot. And someone told me that that's not the case in Boise. That's not the case where she is now, that they're not accommodating that here. Definitely quite interesting. Remember with Jodie Arias, she went from blonde to like completely dark haired, and then also wore glasses. That was also quite a big difference. I can't help wondering whether the strictness. By the way, I've just heard today from a journalist that the media are now barred from recording any activity through the side entrance of the court, right? This particular journalist did capture David Warwick coming out the side, and the day before we saw April Raymond coming out. And so now the media have been told we may not sort of stalk that side entrance either. But I kind of get the feeling that, well, let me just put it this way. I sort of wonder, is the strictness with why no one can get a photo of Laurie VALLOW so that Chad can't see her either? Because one presumes that Chad may still have feelings for her and may still be in love with her. And maybe if Chad sees Laurie as she is now, maybe he'll be either willing to throw her under the bus or not. Maybe there's this feeling that it hinges on Chad still loving Laurie. If Chad no longer loves Laurie, what's going to happen? The other question is Laurie going to testify? And if she does, will she throw Chad under the bus? Or will she throw anyone under the bus? Will she throw Alex under the bus? We'll see, I guess. If so, I don't know. Like, Laurie doesn't seem to be looking at anyone in the gallery, doesn't seem to be greeting anyone in the gallery, which is quite interesting question. It's quite strange, right? Okay, so let's continue. I'm sorry that this is not a sexy live, like lots of photos, but I mean, that's essentially the issue here, that you cannot take any photos, record anything from the courtroom. And I'm trying to tell you what's happening in the courtroom. So you've got to rely on my description, and I'm sorry, it's just me. So I'm sorry, there's no like music and flashing lights and so on, but a courtroom actually isn't that either. It's just people testifying. Okay. So David Warwick, I thought would be the next witness. He was the next witness. Melanie Gibbs' husband. Laurie sips from a paper cup. I'm not sure if it's water or coffee. I've got a feeling it's actually water, but you can sort of see through the cup, and it doesn't seem dark enough to be coffee, but who knows? During some of the breaks, you actually saw the jurors coming in holding cups. I'm pretty sure they had coffee. My first impression of David Warwick was actually quite good. He seemed like a gentleman. He had short, neatly cropped brown hair. He was wearing a black leather jacket, white shirt and striped tie. I think that they might make a good couple. That was my first impression. My later impression was that I think she's married a total conspiracy nut in a way. Like, just because during Cross, Archibald mentioned all the things that he's spoken about, that Russia's, that, I don't know whether it's a prophecy or a vision or a claim or whatever you call it, but Russia's going to attack America, defeat America in 3 days or something like that. And he mentioned all of these different conspiracies. Have you mentioned this? Yes. Have you mentioned that? And then I got a totally different impression of him. You got the idea that he didn't agree with what Chad believed, and you thought, okay, so you've got a sensible head on your shoulders, but then you seem to believe in other strange things, to put it mildly. Yeah, Camille, that is so true. It is gasoline and fire. And I would say Chad is the gasoline and Laurie is the fire, right? Definitely. Okay, so let's continue. So I must say you got a deeper sense of the intrigue and the what's going on in Melanie and David's marriage, when David was on the stand. There's a little bit of a sense that their marriage might be in trouble because they haven't spoken to each other for a week. They're living in separate states, and there does seem to be a bit of trouble in paradise. And he even said, like, his opening words were that Melanie was upset with him for not being with her at trial. Melanie wanted David kind of at her side, I guess, and I think I can't remember why he wasn't. It's either because he was sick or because he was working. I think it was because he was sick, and so apparently he apparently defied the subpoena. He was told not to look at any media coverage, and he listened to 45 minutes of it anyway, and some other things before he shut it off. And what is quite interesting is people were saying, did he do this willfully? Did he do it on purpose? And I personally think the answer is, and the judge said, that he finds the conduct to be willful, but it's not really particularly harmful. Anyway, so there you have it. They've been married 2.25 years, I think. He lives in Utah, she lives in Arizona. He's been sick, I'm not sure with what, and he's on antibiotics. He did seem quite pale. Then Archibald sort of, in a weird way, I actually enjoyed Archibald's cross of David Warwick. I don't know. It's one of the few moments that I enjoyed from the defense. But he said, after your wife's testimony, what did you talk about? Oh, we didn't talk at all. He said, is that normal? No. Right? So can you see that there's definitely a problem going on between Melanie and David? And then YouTube came up. What did you watch on YouTube? Did you read the comments? What articles or whatever did you watch? And so the whole thing of willfulness came up. And so I must say, I was sitting there wondering if that should have been allowed. And it's quite hard to say. Because you're basing it on what someone is claiming privately. They're saying, oh, I just watched 45 minutes on YouTube. Sorry about that. How do you know that for sure? But I did think it was quite clever of the judge to say, okay, this is not perfect. I'm going to let you testify, even though there's a risk that it's tainted. But then I want to allow the defense added space to challenge what you're saying to sort of mitigate potential bias. So I thought that was quite a sensible way of, you know, being sort of conciliatory to all sides. Yeah, that's quite a good point. What was his dream? He said something about it being adversarial. Obviously, there is audio where you hear him talk about it briefly, but he said he didn't really speak in detail, just saying that it was a dark dream and something about adversarial, but he didn't really go beyond that. Also, he said that he was screaming, and then Melanie woke him up because he was screaming. Um, and so it really gives you an idea that something was going on. On the one hand, I sort of thought he must be quite an intuitive guy because something really terrible was happening that night. On the other hand, because he believes in conspiracies, um, you wonder about this bad dream. But the fact that Melanie mentions it, I guess she must have had one. Just in terms of sitting behind Laurie, you know, in the true crime space, so, you know, when you cover true crime, you, especially the way that I do, you have some very unexpected encounters that you don't necessarily want to have. So, for example, I've viewed autopsy images in the Oscar Pistorius case, in the Rebecca Zahau case, in the West Memphis 3 case, and those autopsy images are sort of seared into your mind. You know, it's not like I would like to, like I would like to spend my time looking at autopsy photos. I also saw post-mortem photos of Susan Roder, that's another case in South Africa. And all of that sticks in your mind, right? That's kind of par for the course, things like autopsy photos. But what is a little bit different is when you're sitting in a court like I was today, and someone who is suspected of murder is sitting right in front of you, and it feels like they occasionally glance at you. It feels like there's some subterranean thing taking place. It's not a very nice feeling. You feel there's like a dark, and I'm not saying with Laurie that there's something dark, and with say Henry van Breda there's not. It's the same, almost like black hole that's sucking kind of energy out of you, right? You there trying to just observe, but there's something going on that they know and they've seen that you'll never know and never see. All you can do is sort of guess at it, right? And it definitely is disturbing. It definitely is disturbing. You know, some people make a choice to go down a certain road, and some people, for whatever reason, make a choice not to. They choose to be good. I think part of the reason why I'm such an honest person, to be perfectly clear, is I think when I was a young child, my impression was to get favor and love from my parents, because they were very fair people, my mother and father, was by being as fair and honest as I possibly could be. And I think there's something like that going on where even when that passed, even when I'm now an adult, that need to demonstrate goodness and honesty and truthfulness and integrity, I think is in almost in a way to try to earn someone else's love, right? So you might say, well, that's not actually, shouldn't you believe in truth for truth's sake? And I do. Shouldn't you believe in honesty for honesty's sake? And I do. But it's definitely a lot stronger in me than I think in a lot of people. I mean, I studied law as well. I remember as a little boy, I found, sorry to stray, but I just want to quickly mention this. I found a coin in between the furniture, and I went to my mother and I said, "Do you know whose this is?" And she said, "No." And so I literally, I think I took it to my room with the idea, as soon as my father comes home, I'm going to ask him if it's his, and if it is or if it isn't, maybe I can have it. And then I think I later put the coin at the phone, just because it's like, well, I've now taken money to my room. Anyway, when I got home, before I could talk to my father, my mother told him that I'd taken this coin, and I got one of the biggest beatings of my life because of the assumption that I may have been dishonest. So can you see what I'm talking about? It's this knowledge that honesty is such a high standard, and you might say that's the reason why you are so interested in that, and you're trying to prove that. But for whatever reason, some people go down the opposite path, and I'm just saying, you feel that, you can feel that. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, let me get back to this. So Archibald says there's a reason we have rules. He was quite almost sarcastic here. It's quite a display of emotion from him. He said we can't just say golly gee, oh sorry, I watched a YouTube video. He said that David Warwick purposefully accessed the video and then he accessed another. And I thought he made a convincing point. I was convinced, made me think, I think he should actually be excluded. And then he didn't exclude him. He found Warwick's conduct willful. But he made this concession. He said, I'll allow a lot of cross-examination. At this point, Laurie was sitting alone at the defense table, back turned to the gallery, and now obviously David Warwick was going to be coming up. And so now again, she's scribbling down a lot of notes. Nothing's happening in court, but she's taking notes. Leanne says, I don't know who did this. Was it Chad or Alex or both? Well, we do know that Chad sent a text to Tammy saying that he shot a raccoon and burnt it, I think, and buried it. So it suggests that Chad was. It's hard to believe that Chad wasn't involved in the burial at his own property. Beyond that, I'm not sure. The fact is, we know that Alex shot Charles. We know that. So didn't Alex also shoot the children? I don't know for a fact whether there were bullet wounds with the children, and if there were, shouldn't gunshots have been heard at the apartments? So I'm not quite sure about that aspect. Okay, let's continue. How long have we been at it? An hour and 19. Okay. So Warwick did have some pretty potent testimony in the end, and like I'm glad that he was allowed to testify, because he did have some important first-hand observations and insights. Thanks, Cindy. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. And Chad was a gravedigger. Good point. And as you say, Alex tasered Joe Ryan. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Deborah. Thank you. Zircon says, I've not heard about gun wounds, but the point is that Chad says to Tammy that he shot a raccoon just with one shot. And I don't know if you would necessarily hear that out in the country. I've been out there, and there's really not too many people out there to hear that sort of thing. And if you did hear it, would you really care? Sarah says this crew seems like they would use poison. That does seem, that's a good point. That does seem also possible. I don't think Chad would mention shooting something willy-nilly though, but who knows? Let's continue. So yeah, we have it from yet another witness. Did he see Tylee? Did he see JJ? So those are my questions, and then they were actually brought up. So at this point, Laurie's chatting with Archibald. He seems to be leading the defense. Laurie often seems to prefer Archibald. She seems to prefer him to sort of engage with. And then she talks to Thomas, and that's the beginning. When did you first meet Laurie? In Arizona. At this point, Laurie's got a glass in her hand, obviously not taking any notes. At this point, Thomas is browsing on his phone, Laurie's other lawyer. Interestingly, Chad wanted to do a book with David. Did you? No, I didn't feel it was right. They were sitting around the table. Laurie was an amazing hostess. They were fixing food. He had quite a lot of good things to say about Laurie. You got the sense that he's always liked her. After that, he saw Laurie at her apartment. Laurie and Melanie wanted to do a podcast with David. The Book of Mormon conference was in Rexburg. And so I just mentioned this bad dream. Anyway, David said he never saw Tylee. This is where Laurie tells David that Tylee's at college and she wants to be independent. That's her story. Bear in mind, at this point, Tylee's dead. Tylee's at college. She wants to be independent. Yeah. Terry says, David can write a book called I Didn't Think It Was Right. Okay. JJ looked really happy when he went outside. This is according to David. He said he saw Chad 4 times. Chad was trying to teach him about their beliefs. He said that Satan had the power to push people out of their bodies. Who was present? Laurie and Melanie. I'd dearly love to hear the podcast, but does anyone know what has happened to it? You know, they made a podcast. Does that podcast still exist? Does anyone know? Chad led the way. So it's quite interesting. Chad led the way in terms of the spiritual stuff, but who led the way in terms of applying the spiritual stuff? Who decided, okay, that's what person's a zombie, and we need to actually take action against the zombie. So David seemed to disagree with Chad. We don't know if that's absolutely so or not. Maybe David agreed with him at the time, and in court he's, got a different perspective. But it did seem that he disagreed with Chad. He was asked, are the doctrines taught through the LDS church that Chad was teaching? And then he said, I was just listening, and then I questioned what Chad was saying. Then there it is. Did you believe him? No. And yeah, Laurie is just sitting back listening, not taking any notes, just listening. I heard Chad at a scuffle. This was also one of the major moments of the day, although we have heard it before. You've got another person saying that Chad had a scuffle with JJ. I think Chad was upstairs with JJ, and Chad then got a scratch on his neck. And what that kind of shows is that there seemed to be real enmity between Chad and that little boy. That Chad didn't seem to have. Chad seems like a gentle teddy bear, but JJ really didn't seem to like him, and maybe with good reason. Tylee didn't like Melanie, and maybe with good reason. But JJ and Tylee not liking Chad and Melanie, How do you think that went down with Laurie? Her kids not liking her friends. But I mean, what was to like with Chad? Well, someone who's turning Laurie into a more and more crazy mother, a more and more heartless, unemotional, disconnected mother. I mean, isn't that what was happening? Now, if you think about just the idea of Christianity and God, and then someone is talking to your parent about God, and then your experience as the child is that your mother is becoming less nurturing, your mother is becoming less loving, your mother is becoming more prickly and more reactionary and more triggered and more obsessed and more OCD or just like paranoid. And then you've got to ask yourself, is that good for my mother? Is that good for me? And so, how on earth can this belief system be good if it's making the people that are the recipients of it unhappy and breaking the family up? And then Laurie will then go to April and say, abandon your kids. What is good about this whole belief system? That's also a good point, yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Where was JJ? And I think this is also quite big, is that virtually the last night of JJ's life, who was with JJ? Later, Alex came and carrying JJ, who was asleep. JJ was wearing shorts. This part I thought was weakly done. I would have liked, because we know that JJ was found in red pajamas. I would have asked him what color was his pajamas, right? In other words, was he killed shortly after that? Is it something the prosecution either didn't know or didn't think of? Maybe they wanted to avoid it. Can you imagine if he said JJ was wearing blue or whatever? I also considered the possibility that when Alex carried JJ wasn't actually alive at that point, but I guess I'm thinking about the Madeleine McCann case, but probably he was alive. Maybe he'd been sedated already at that point. Who knows? And that night, Warwick had a nightmare. He said, this was significant. He said, it was the worst nightmare of my life. I woke up screaming. Now, although it seems David's intuition is spot on, this also, in a way, presents David as this visionary, as he knew something was happening that night. So, I don't know. Maybe his intuition was spot on, maybe not. Warwick said, I think this is the next morning. He didn't see Laurie or that night. He didn't see Laurie or JJ. The next morning, he didn't see JJ. Did you ask about JJ? This I find quite interesting. Laurie told him that JJ had had an episode, obviously through the night, and JJ had knocked down a picture of Christ. Alex had come to take him away. And if you think about those words, they're quite symbolic, right? Warwick wanted to see JJ because he saw no sign of damage or scuff marks. That part I found a little bit hard to believe. But if it's true, good for him. The day Laurie said she'd sent, that day Laurie said she'd sent JJ to Alex. That was Monday, the 23rd of September. It just seems like a perfectly ordinary thing to say. Laurie sent JJ to Alex that day, but it's actually a huge concession. Not only does JJ disappear and end up dead, but Laurie describes herself as unhappy with him during this last proof of life. So bear in mind what the state are trying to prove is intent from Laurie? Just basically, did Laurie conspire to kill JJ? That's question one. Did Laurie conspire to kill Tylee? Did Laurie conspire to kill Tammy? Right? Not Charles, but those three people. And so at the end of when JJ disappears, the very last thing that happens before he disappears is Laurie is unhappy with him because he, in her own words, knocked over a picture of Christ, which David doesn't see any evidence of. And he's got a red mark on his, or him and Chad have been scuffling. And she then sends her son into Alex's custody. And Alex is the sort of, seems to be the angel of death in the Charles VALLOW case. So could Alex not be the angel of death in another incident as well? So all of that, I think, is quite compelling for the jury. But the jury might not see it that way. Someone in the jury might say, okay, so, but where's an actual conversation where she says to someone X, Y, Z? And another argument you could make is that Laurie never has that conversation because it's all couched in symbolic language. And I did find that very interesting, that for such a symbolic story that this is, when Chad talks about probably what happened to Tylee, it's symbolic. It's a raccoon. The raccoon is shot, the raccoon is burnt, the raccoon is buried. Well, isn't that symbolic for someone else? Okay, on to the next one. David Warwick, how would you describe Alex? He was a fun-loving guy. Remember, wasn't there someone who didn't like Alex? I'm just trying to think who it was. Someone who testified who said they didn't like him. Who called him vulgar. Or was it Melanie? Can you remember who said that he was quite vulgar? Oh, Colby, that's right. Yeah, just make you wonder, did Melanie like him? So anyway, at this point, thanks, Elise. Laurie's sitting back, she's listening. Right hand balled in a small fist. She raised the yellow marker to her mouth, fiddles with it. Prosecutor objects to defense's criticism of Warwick's beliefs. I must say, I wondered whether, although I agreed with what Archibald was saying, I was wondering whether criticizing someone's religious beliefs in Idaho in front of the jury might not be particularly good for the defense. And then there's a part I really wish I could, maybe I'll try and find it in the audio, but Archibald repeatedly asked about crazy, well, what I consider quite crazy visions of like apocalyptic wars taking place, and lots of visions that he's claimed to have had. You said you had a vision at Laurie VALLOW, then he interrupted and said, no, I had a nightmare. What's the difference? Archibald sarcastically asked if visions are just pretended. So he kind of was saying, oh, visions pretend and dreams are real, or dreams pretend, or dreams just dreams, and visions are, what's actually going on. And there you have it. I don't really know what that means. So at this point, I noticed John Thomas is left-handed. Sometimes he looks on his laptop, sometimes he looks on his phone. Again, I'm also thinking, is he looking at social media? And you get a very real sense that although you're trying to report on what you're seeing, there's some powerful people in the room with you. You know, then there was a sound issue, so it was quite ironic. If there's a little tweet or not a tweet, a bleep or just the smallest electrical sound from us, our phones get confiscated, right? And sometimes it is a mistake. I mean, when I was outside court, I wanted to see how my last YouTube video on the VALLOW case was doing, and I had all the things on my phone on silent and the volume turned down. And when I went onto YouTube, it actually played the sound. And if I could easily have done that in court, and I would have had my phone confiscated. But anyway, so yeah, you had a sound issue from inside the court because of the court's instruments. It was like this weird noise, and you kind of thought, shouldn't someone be sent out of the room for that? Chad mentioned that JJ had scratched his neck. I thought that was quite interesting. Have you wanted to be part of the 144,000? No. Again, I don't know whether I really believe that. Really, you don't want to be part of the chosen few. He feels that Chad didn't have the authority to gather. Then I noticed the ginger juror on the far side at the back. He was like doing this. He just seemed very bored. He was looking at the jury. Laurie sitting back listening, twirling her pen in her fingers. Then I think she yawned as well. Yeah. And then he described Laurie as one of the sweetest, kindest people. And then Laurie smiled. It's like you can see how it can be quite easy to get Laurie on your side, you know. And on that note, Archibald was done. And then this was, I think, one of the best moments in terms of legal presentation of the whole day. It's because it's the kind of language I like to use. Ms. Smith said, I want to ask you about reality. Who carried JJ up to bed? David Warwick says, Alex. Who told you what happened to JJ? Like, so the next day. Who told you what happened to him? You know, Laurie. Laurie didn't say, I don't know where he is. I'm not sure where he is. He'd said what had happened to him, and that means that she felt that she did know. What did she say? That JJ was out of control. That's also quite it's not like JJ irritated me by making a noise. To call someone out of control is quite a big sweeping statement, right? It's like a statement of contempt. You are out of control. And so what do you think, like what ultimately happened to JJ, what do you think that may have been about? Wasn't it a form of total control? Anyway, I thought it was a very good redirect. David Warwick was excused. As I say, as he walked out, no glance to Laurie. He also patted Larry's shoulder on the way out. And again, now that we're in recess now, Laurie's got a lot of notes to make because she doesn't want to look at the gallery. So as I say, during testimony, she hardly writes anything down. When everything's over, sorry, now I've really got to look down at my notepad and write important notes. So this was a moment where Angela from, I think it's CBS 2, was talking, that is Tammy's aunt over there, just about Chad and Tammy's health and that sort of thing. And I actually asked her, have you read any of Chad's books? And she said, goodness, no. I'm looking forward to, they are going to be looking at Chad's book sales in terms of Amazon on Monday, and I'm really looking forward to that. I personally, she said that she thought that he was selling a lot of books. I personally expect it to be surprising, if not shocking, how few books he sold, and also how little money is made from that. We'll see what what ultimately happens. LGW says there's a Van Gogh event in Cincinnati. Are you going to go? Hey, good to see you here. It's mentioned here that Laurie decided not to give JJ's medications. No wonder JJ was out of control. Then also, if you think, well, one reason he may be out of control is his sister has died, his father is, his stepfather has died, and his mother is sort of cuckoo. What is he supposed to do? Sokolin says, I have no idea on this particular trial. What do you mean? Are you new to it? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, let's continue. Okay. And so this was the next session. This is where I noticed every juror had a notebook. And then it was announced that there wouldn't be, so that they say because the trial is moving faster than they expected, that there's not going to be trial day tomorrow. And so the reason why they do that is so that people who they sort of scheduled to be present, like in advance, that can't come earlier, the trial narrative is slowed down so that by the time that schedule happens, then that person who's booked a flight or booked whatever, that they can be coordinated. Does that make sense? But it definitely suits me to not have trial tomorrow, because I'm going away for the weekend, so now I can got more time to go somewhere and be there before I come back. So next on the stand was Detective Bruce Mattingly. He had a navy blue suit, shaved head, short, solid physique, based in Fremont County. He was a FBI intelligence analyst. Oh, sorry. And then he came in, spoke very briefly, no cross-examination. And the next witness was Benjamin Dean. I found this very yeah, it wasn't terribly interesting what they were covering. So what Dean did, for example, was he looked at data from visits to Yellowstone. He also looked at device data from Chad Daybell's residence. I seem to remember just trying to think if it was Benjamin Dean or someone else. I think it was following Benjamin Dean that a heck of a lot of exhibits were entered. It went on for about half an hour. Okay, we're entering States Exhibit 114, and then long period of silence. Now we're entering State, and that went on for about half an hour. It's quite hard to stay awake when that's going on. He also looked at Tammy Daybell's phone. So you're having this kind of thing taking place. Sometimes when Laurie does write a note, it's to make some sort of joke. Laurie seems to be her strategy, is almost whenever the jury leave the court, Laurie looks like she's smiling, almost like, I'm pleased. Things are going my way. I'm happy about where we are, right? She seems to be putting a happy smile on the conclusion of every section of the trial. Must have come to the Grand Canyon. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So I thought we were going to deal with the raccoon text, and then we did. That was Exhibit 229, text between Chad and Tammy. It was sent at exactly 11:53 and 27 seconds. And that's how he started off with. I've had an interesting morning. Shot a big raccoon. And the timing of that. So obviously what I think Chad was trying to do was have plausible deniability. So in other words, someone could have said to, maybe someone drove by or walked by or was walking their dog, and maybe someone saw him, and maybe he worried that someone would say to Tammy, "What was Chad doing out in the garden?" or whatever. And so him saying this is potentially plausible deniability, but it's also putting on record that he did something bizarre that day, not anticipating that law enforcement would be so accurate in following up that they would recreate a timeline, and then this text would then achieve the significance that it would, because it would have actually been, if he was trying to cover his tracks, it would have been far better had Chad never sent this text. Bear in mind that Tammy would die a little bit later, right? Yeah. Well, I'll be going to Colorado in the specific place where Chris Watts lived. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I hire a car in Colorado, I'm not quite sure what the roads are like. I've navigated the roads in Idaho so far, and I feel like I can handle it. I don't know whether Colorado is a lot more like, I really don't want to be like in peak hour traffic. So I need a little bit of intel on that. So Tylee was last seen alive on September 8th. The big raccoon shot, burned, and buried in Chad's yard, we assuming was Tylee. And so it was very brief. At this point, Laurie's furiously scribbling notes. Now one wonders, are those notes saying, actually, Chad loved hunting? Or are those notes, you see, Chad killed Tylee? What's that all about? This is, I thought, quite interesting. Where so Laurie will sometimes lean over to Archibald and make a joke, and he laughs. When I saw her doing the same with John Thomas, he didn't laugh. She laughed, he didn't. So next was Detective Stubbs, Rexburg PD, bright red tie, white shirt, gray beard. Sorry, gray suit, white shirt, bright red tie. And so this is testimony that's going to run over into Monday. It looks like we're going to see Chad's financial records. I'm looking forward to that. And this is where it was really got tedious. This was one of the hardest parts to get through so far of the entire of my covering this case. Just reading lots and lots of records, and I had, again, not enough sleep. And so what's going to be great about tonight going into tomorrow is I can at last get some of the rest that I need. I've really been burning the candle at both ends. Anyway, so he says they read a lot of exhibits into the record. So we're going to see pharmaceutical records for Tammy. As I spoke to, one thing that came up when I spoke to Tammy's aunt outside the courtroom was, she said, I asked her if Tammy was training for a marathon, and she said no, she was just running like for 5Ks or something like that. And so I said, yeah, but was she healthy? She said, yes, no, she was healthy. And then also Amazon certified business records. I'm really looking forward to that. As someone who is an author myself, really looking forward to seeing how well Chair Daybell did, because there's some photos of him promoting his books, and I'm just curious to see what his sales were like. And so that was it. Stubbs' first involvement was November 1st, and it started with a search for the grey Jeep with the Texas plates involved in an attempted shooting. I find it really amazing that is actually how this case started. It didn't start with looking for JJ or Tylee. That's not how this started. It didn't start with the murder of Charles VALLOW. It started with Brandon Boudreaux telling the cops about an attempted shooting that he narrowly escaped, and then describing a grey Jeep with Texas plates. That's how this whole case started. And obviously it expanded way, like, it started with that, and look at where it's come to. Wait, what says, where's Timmy's being looked after? But I sometimes feel like a bad dog dad, that's for sure. I also don't know whether I must bring Timmy next time, because if I do bring Timmy, what happens when I'm in court all day, right? I don't know what you guys think. If I bring Timmy to America and I go to trial, what happens to Timmy? Okay, so let's continue. The person that Timmy's staying with is taking him for walks where I take him for walks. So everything is the same, it's just not me with him. I'm not going to play my interview. You guys can check it out at the link. Have I got the link here? Yeah, this is the link. You guys can go and check it out if you want to. Someone says you can just hire someone to look after him. I'm unfortunately not Mr. Moneybags. I'd love to bring Timmy along, but that kind of thing is pretty, that can add up. Definitely can add up. Okay, so exhibits 36B and C are being shown. November 1st, 2019. At this point, Laurie's chuckling with John Thomas. She kind of made this sort of gesture. I don't know what she was describing. Laurie and Chad are walking hand in hand to, what is that place called? Hobby Lobby or something like that. Do you guys know what it's called? Hobby something. The next word sort of rhymes with it. So they were actually showing us pictures on screen of them captured on CCTV. At this point, Laurie takes a couple of notes. This footage is prior to Tammy's death. On the 4th, the Jeep was found, obviously. And bear in mind, they just stopped making the payments on that Jeep. The payments of, I think, $500 or $600 a month were supposed to be being paid, and they simply weren't being paid. But in a weird way, the Jeep was being kept when it wasn't paid for. The welfare check occurred after the Jeep was found, right? So it's only after the Jeep was found that the welfare check happened, and that's when everything kind of exploded. So then we watched Stubbs' body cam of his encounter with Laurie VALLOW. This is the first time that that the gallery, that the public had ever seen this body cam. So a lot of us have heard Laurie talking to the cops, where they ask her about what's going on, and she sort of laughs and says that her life is in danger, and obviously she can't disclose where she is. But of course, her story didn't really work because the cops came back the same day. No, she said, just call Melanie Gibb, JJ's with Melanie Gibb. And then they did call her, couldn't get hold of her. And then they came back to address that. And then her story was that, oh, well, the reason is because JJ went to watch Frozen 2. Sorry. So that's why you wouldn't have been able to speak to Melanie because she was in a movie. And so was Melanie really in a movie, right? Hobby Lobby, I think that is it. Yeah, so I mean, it's a tough one. I really want my dog to be with me, but I don't know if it's really, I don't really know what to do. If I'm in trial, I definitely can't have my dog around a lot, you know. Okay, so at this point, Laurie is frowning. She's watching herself being confronted by the police, and of course, the jury are watching this too. It's not a good look. It's not a good look to see video of herself giving an evasive story that turns out to be inaccurate to law enforcement. Stubbs says his suspicions were aroused because Laurie suggested that Chad, sorry, that should be Chad, was her brother's friend. So can you see how that is evasive? Who's the guy that was with your brother? Oh, Chad is Alex's friend. But shouldn't you say it's my husband? And also, my husband's wife has recently died. And where are your children? Oh, I can't really explain it to you. So Stubbs had actually seen Laurie and Chad holding hands, and now she's being evasive about her relationship with them. And so, to his credit, he is experiencing red flags. And so that's what he said. They were being evasive and lying. And so, yeah, in court, none of this is a good look for Laurie. You know, why are you being evasive and lying? Why do you need to be evasive and lying? Where is JJ? And this comes back to that question. Let me just bring this up a bit bigger and myself. It comes back to the question. It's not a good look. Laurie does appear to have been lying and evasive. Is that going to be enough to get a guilty verdict for first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder? Right? It's not a good look, definitely. Was she cooperating with the investigation? No. Was she being evasive? Yes. Did she lie about certain things? Yes. Is that going to be enough to get her charged in basically a triple murder? And you might say yes for you, but could there be one juror who says, I find this whole thing a little bit confusing. I don't really know that she's done anything wrong. She's just maybe a strange person, and I'm not sentencing her to blah, 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 you know. Let's have a look at the poll. 61% say the prosecution are doing enough. 23% say it's complicated. Sally says it only takes one that wants to see the shovel in her hand. If Laurie testifies and she gets one jury member to feel sympathetic towards her, bear in mind there are quite a few male jurors. Who knows? I don't know who is more likely to feel sympathetic towards her, males or females. I don't really know. Zircon says, in my opinion, it's not complicated. The legal thing is quite complicated. That's why it's an 8-week trial and not an 8-day trial. The legal process is quite complicated. Bear in mind, the person who killed the victims is dead, and it's Laurie's brother. So that makes things already quite a lot more complicated. Also, it's not only a triple murder, it's potentially a quadruple murder with possibly even another attempted murder on top of that, and possibly another murder on top of that as well. So there's also financial crimes as well. So I don't know. I do think it is quite complicated. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so we hadn't seen it before. The audio had been released, and then we were going to see a second body cam. This was actually quite interesting because we were going inside Laurie Vallow's home. It's certainly the first time I'd ever seen this. And so it did look somewhat in disarray, somewhat, especially you come into the front door and there's all sorts of things, you can't quite see what they are, but sort of colorful things lying all over the place. And then you did notice 2 bedrooms. You couldn't quite tell who they belonged to, but you assumed because they were side by side and because of the size of them, you assumed that they were Kylie and JJ's bedrooms, and they were. And then when you looked in the closets, those closets were bare. The beds looked as though someone had slept in them and not been made, and the closets are bare. And so this is quite interesting. Laurie actually made a rare glance towards us as the court was seated after the break. Or was that after the jury went out? Let's just see. After the jury came in. The detective is asked, did you go back to Laurie's apartment? Yes. And then, why? Because he called Melanie Gibb and Melanie wasn't answering her phone. Okay. So then we watched exhibit 60, which is the second body cam. At this point, the gallery is very thinned out. It takes stamina to report on a trial, just even just to sit through a trial. The members of the public that are just sitting there watching take stamina. Parts of it are exhausting, parts of it are boring, parts of it are interesting, but there are definitely parts that you have to endure, that are tedious. It takes stamina. So, for example, there's one bench with seating for 8 people. After this break, there's only one person sitting on it. I always find that quite sad because there are people down in the overflow that desperately want to sit in the room and you know, there is capacity at the end of the day. Why not let them in for the last session? They've been there all day. Anyway, so Laurie uses a clever ploy to explain why Melanie's not answering. They're probably in the movies. They're Frozen too, but JJ wasn't at the movies. Melanie wasn't at the movies either. That was another lie. Actually, JJ was dead, and Laurie knew that he wasn't with Melanie. So then why did he lie about that? And I don't really know whether the prosecution can at this point make that clear. But why not ask the person on the stand and make that explicit and say, do you think that that was true? No. Why? Maybe the defense will say objection, speculation, and it probably is. But it does show what a smooth operator Laurie is and how naturally it comes to her. And even if you have that objection, speculation, at least you're putting the thought on record and in the jury's mind. Why is Laurie lying about this? Let the jury think about that. Let the defense say, please don't speculate? Well, actually, maybe you should. Maybe you should start thinking about it. 7J is admitted, and this is where we go inside the apartment, 175. I really regret that I couldn't find Laurie's apartment. I heard now it's on Pioneer Road. I don't know whether I got the wrong address when I was in Rexburg. Anyway, there's no way I could have gone inside, right? Lots of documents and envelopes from Amazon on the kitchen counter. That's just quite weird. Going into her kitchen and just seeing, first of all, there were at least 2 envelopes, possibly of books, on the kitchen counter with that Amazon smiley face on it. Then there were guns in the garage. There was lots of clutter. It was quite an untidy setup. Then we went upstairs, and at this point, I looked at Laurie, watching all of this on her monitor. And it had to be bringing back memories. You kind of got a sense that she's also being taken into what used to be her home. She can probably remember the smell and the voices. And by the way, this is not beer, it's iced tea. Yeah, they not only moved there in a rush, I think they sort of moved out of there in a rush. Okay, then we went so there was a lease agreement printed and left on the printer. I wonder who paid for all of this, who paid for hiring that apartment. I mean, if Chad says, hey, come and live with me, or come and live in Rexburg, who ends up paying for the lease? When you look at Chad's property, it doesn't look like he could afford it. Then we go down the hall into the laundry room, into the bathroom, and then I thought it might be Tali's bedroom, and it turned out it was. There were a little bit of winter clothes and then very little else. Then we went to the next room, another bed closet, stored inside, guitars on the floor. And of course, a lot of the stuff that used to be there was taken into a storage thing. That also shows a kind of intent. If you've done something with a person, have you also done something with their clothes? If you're doing something with their clothes, isn't it because you know where that person is? What's going on here? Okay, so that was it. Laurie sits back. I saw her looking at the court door, and then when I went out the door, I also looked up and I saw that there is a clock above the court door. So she was clearly looking at the time as well. And so we then adjourned for the weekend plus one day. And so, yeah, that's been the news of the day as well. Charges dropped against Alec Baldwin. So that's my spiel. I hope you found it worthwhile. I'm sorry they're not fireworks. I would love to have made it a bit more colorful, but that would add probably another hour to the prep and maybe also another hour to the presentation. It's already 10 to 10 at night. I'm actually a little hungry. Terry says, how much had been moved into the storage at that point? Terry, I'm not actually sure. I know it was a lot of things like bicycles and toys. I think boxes of clothing, things like that. What are your thoughts on what you expect from the defense? I wonder whether mother is going to testify. I wonder whether Colby won't be called back to testify. Yeah. So, so family members might certainly be part of this. And then why wouldn't Laurie testify herself? I mean, Laurie could easily say that Alex took matters into his own hands and she was afraid to say anything because of what he could do to her, you know, or of what he and Chad might do to her. I don't know. Babs, you're just in time for me to say bye-bye. Babs, I just got on here. I'm dealing with the trial of the murder of my two best friends of 32 years. We want to know, but some things we don't. I'm sorry to hear that. Who are your? So it's not this trial, I take it. It's not this trial that is your best friends of 32 years. That's a good point. Are we going to hear from them? Another interesting thing is, are we going to hear from Larry? And quite a few people have said they don't think so because Larry's been in court every day, and so I don't know. I don't know if we are going to hear from Larry. I think so too. I think so too. By the way, it's very cold yet. I think Timmy would enjoy just how cold it is. But yeah, I think he would have maybe also found the snow quite interesting. When I was in Big Sky and I saw people with their dogs and their dogs playing in the snow, I definitely missed Timmy quite a lot. Sometimes there was actually someone bringing their dog out of the court building, and I must say, when I saw that, I was like, "Wow, you can take dogs everywhere these days. Pretty cool." Elise, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Um, Chelsea, thanks a lot. What does Laurie say? Gas money. Gas money from Canada. You know, I'm not that far from Canada, Idaho. Like, I didn't really realize how close Idaho is to Canada. So is Montana and Yellowstone. It's all pretty close to the Canadian border. So thanks very much for that. Jennifer says, I don't think Laurie will testify. I think she's confident she's going to get away with that. Um, a lot of people said that they didn't think Alec Murdoch would testify, and it didn't seem like a good idea, and yet he did. And yeah, I don't think it was a good idea in the end. But look at that situation, and bear in mind if she feels like her back's against the wall and she feels like they are going to convict her, then she might want to play the card, which is the sympathy card, and try and just confuse. You can just confuse one juror and just carry the sympathy of one juror. Who knows? You know, if you were told that, wouldn't you play that card? YouTube has a big survey. What? What? I don't know what that's about. Um, Lisa, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for that. Timmy gets to walk in a dog park every day. So, you know, it is what it is. And I will see him again. So, yeah. So someone says, can anyone find the link to my interview? I'll put it in chat again if you want to watch it. Okay, let's deal with the last couple of questions. Well, I've been on for 2 hours, 15 minutes. I'm hoping to do a Van Gogh live between now and Sunday night, not now, between tomorrow and Sunday night. So for those on the Team Peachtree channel, check it out. I also want to start putting a lot more. I've got so much video and photo of my travels in America. So I'm going to start populating the Team Peachtree channel just with, I'm not going to put it up on here, just with the drive from Boise to Jackson Hole, for example, the experience at the Grand Tetons, and I'm soon going to do the Pacific Coastal Highway, and so that's all going to be on the Team Peachtree channel. So if you're not a subscriber there, go and check it out, or go and subscribe. It's going to be up there quite soon. This time next week, I'm leaving the trial, and I'm going to be in Oregon. Sorry, not Oregon, Washington. So I might come back to Boise if Laurie testifies, or if I decide the trial is whatever, hotting up or whatever it is. I didn't come to America to just cover cases. I came here to see the country and also to get inside the whole true crime space, to sit in the courtroom. But my plan wasn't to come here and just cover true crime, just to have a little bit of an adventure and move around a lot and see a lot, and I have so far. But I'm sort of coming to the end of the Boise, Idaho phase of my trip. Well, next week, this time, I'll be at the end of that. I have liked being here, so I might, as I said, I might come back. I feel like I've made some friends here. I've met some of my supporters here as well. I was on television yesterday, so we'll see. I might come back. But there are also other cases in America. There's the case in Austin, Texas in June. So we'll see. Yeah. Okay, on the upload, what's the survey about? I think so too. True Jedi Forever says, come to South Florida. I'm not going to be in Florida this trip, but I do have a school friend in Florida, and I'm going to be in Florida, I think, November next year for the launch of the Artemis 2. So I am planning on being more on the East Coast side when I come back to America next year. Thanks a lot, Sinead. Thank you. Emily says, good night, take care of yourself. Have you met any other authors there? I haven't met Laurie Hillis. And I've heard about what has happened. I haven't actually met her. Yeah, I actually quite like Boise. I'm not sure if I could handle these long winters, but otherwise it's a great city, and I quite like the countryside. Bronwyn says, if she's as devout as she claims, I could see her believing that this trial is in God's hands. Terry says, I'm glad you get an extra day off tomorrow. I am as well. I'm a little bit upset because I got a ticket for tomorrow. I've got one of these tickets, but I'm not going to be needing it. So we'll see if I can get in on Monday. So I've got to be up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to make sure I get the ticket for Monday anyway. Mama Joe, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Don't miss the honeymoon capital of the world. What is that? Talking about Niagara Falls. Emily says, I'm in Central South Florida. Artemis 1 was the unmanned launch to the moon. Artemis 2 has got people inside it. Deborah says, it's nice to hear about it from people who's there. Idaho Mom. Oh, Idaho Mom. Good to see you here. Um, you're Holly, right? Have I got that right? I like your little dog picture there. Um, good to see you in court today. Yeah, no court tomorrow. I thought so, Niagara Falls, okay. Idaho Mom says everyone in court is excited to have someone reporting all the way from South Africa. Yeah. I'm surprised that like in newspapers like this, it's not headline news, like not front page news. You've got to go all the way to over here to get some information about the trial. And I don't know, I just thought you would see this trial like all over the place, but you don't really. Quite strange. Sarah says you'd love Australia, but I have actually been to Australia. I went to Broome and I went to Perth and I went to um, the Whit Sundays and all that. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Sharon. I appreciate it. If you want to follow Angela, she's on Twitter. Let me just see if I can get her Twitter profile. So the reporter who kind of interviewed me for that is Angela Kerndl. And yeah, so you can follow her. She's at Kerndl Angela. Shall I put that into chat? You want to follow her as well? Okay, let's go through the last couple of comments. My son is one of the mechanical engineers on the Orion, which is the capsule holding the astronauts. That's pretty incredible. Emily says maybe I can watch it even if I don't have an account. Yeah, you can watch it without an account, so don't worry about that. It's not like behind any kind of paywall. It's the first video at the top of the page, right? You don't need to be on Twitter. You just go to the link that I put in. Where is Emily? Just go to this link, and then it's the video right at the top. Okay. Sharon says my phone can't handle Twitter. Okay. Okay. Last couple of comments. Yeah, there've been a couple of people in court, members of the public that are tweeting for the very first time. And I mean, this format where you may not take photos, you may not record audio, it's perfect for Twitter. You record short little segments of what is going on in court. And I mean, in a way, that is a recording in itself, right? So there have been a couple of people that are tweeting for the very first time that are members of the public. It's quite interesting. Gwen says, good night all. See you on Team Peachtree for the upcoming Van Gogh letters. So watch that space. Thanks a lot, Terry, for being here. I wonder where Stephanie is. Maybe it's just too late. But yeah, I wonder where Iceland is as well. Okay, so that's it from me. No court tomorrow. I was hoping that I could interview certain people that I've been seeing at court and have them live on this, but one had a migraine and I don't think has been feeling that well. And I kind of want to get an early start anyway. So who knows, maybe I'll do that live with guests on Sunday night or Monday, but I definitely will do it. So look out for that. Where are you going this weekend? You guys are going to have to follow Team Peachtree to find out. Gloria, just have a good weekend, everyone. Oh yeah, Stephanie's at a robotics competition. You are going to have to wait for Team Peachtree, so check that out. Okay, guys, it's late where I am. It's past 10 o'clock. I hope you've enjoyed this analysis. I will try and put up another sort of video just dealing with certain insights that have come about. So, yeah, I'll try and put something up before Monday. Otherwise, take care, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot for the super chats and for your interest. And yeah, if you want to follow my movements, do head to Team Peachtree, which is the other sort of travel-based channel that I've also got. Okay, thanks a lot for listening. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.